When you ask most people, what's the first printed book? The Gutenberg Bible is the top answer. That book was printed over 500 years ago, but the oldest printed book in our collection is almost 1,000 years old. And the very first books, printed using carved woodblocks, are thought to have originated in China over 1,300 years ago, although no examples survive from that time. So little is known about the invention of printing technology and how it spread. Even Gutenberg's original printing press, with its movable type innovations, is lost to time. We guess how it was constructed based on examples that came decades later. The history of printing has many missing pages. Some clues can be traced through the pages that survive. Wei Yang pulled some of those pages from the Huntington Library. They reveal that news of China's print innovations made their way to Europe slowly, over a span of centuries.
So one of the first things I'd like to point out is the book that Marco Polo wrote on his travel to China. So this is the first Latin edition of Marco Polo's The Travel, published around 1485. So in this particular book, Marco Polo was not the earliest Europeans who went to China, but he's certainly the most famous for it. And this book talked about many aspects of things in China that the Europeans did not know about. And when this book was published at the time, it became a huge sensation. A lot of people simply didn't believe Marco Polo's, the stories that he was telling to the European about this kingdom of China. And one of the things that Marco actually did mention in this book is that the circulation of Chinese banknotes, and this is probably the first time that a paper printed banknote was being used by a government.
In manuscript, Marco Polo's tales of China's printing innovations circulated for over 100 years before that first Latin edition was printed in the 15th century. But an example of what a printed Chinese character might look like doesn't appear in a European book until the late 16th century.
The author was Juan Gonzalez Mendoza, and he was a bishop. And even though he has never been to China himself, that he was able to compile these first-person accounts from European travelers, from merchants who went to the country and brought back all these artifacts and details back to Europe. So what I like about this book is that this is the first time that I think when actual evidence of printing of Chinese characters came into Europe. I understand that this is not something that was done by the Chinese, but the fact that a Chinese character was able to make its way across Asia all the way to Europe and is able to ended up in a printed documents that was being printed by using printing press in Europe around this time, to me, that's quite special. So the characters today, because of his lack of understanding and because the characters were something he had gotten secondhand, thirdhand from other travelers who had been to China, by the time they were written down, by the time they were printed, sent to the printer, they were actually unrecognizable to me as a Chinese reader. But nevertheless, this is a quite special book because it contains the first Chinese characters are being printed in a European book in 1585.
Books are inherently shared objects, portable and ordered for maximum clarity, and there's information you can only glean by seeing a book in person. The oldest printed work in our collection is on view at the Huntington for the first time until December 4th, 2023. This sacred Buddhist text, the scripture of the great flower ornament of the Buddha, was printed during the Song Dynasty in 1085. It's part of a 5,850 volume Buddhist canon produced over a 30-year period.
So in the year 1080, we're looking at perhaps hundreds, maybe even thousands of participants. We're looking at monks, we're looking at editors, we're looking at carvers. They came together as part of this at this private temple in the south of China, and they wanted to carve and print a Chinese Buddhist canon, the third such time that has happened in Chinese history. And so we don't know exactly how many people came together, but we know that from 1080 to 1112, so that's a period of 32 years. For 32 years, hundreds, if not thousands of participants came together to work on this particular woodblock printing projects. But I do think that it is very important for me to showcase this book, and it has gone through so many dynastic changes, so many political revolutions. It's probably being sold to many owners, to many bookshops in its lifetime. But to be able to stay in such a great shape, in a remarkably usable shape, and that we are able to work with our conservation teams and art prep team to safely showcase this book in a way so that people can see every single page, people can see every single characters front and back, so that we're able to have this book on display next to one of the Huntington's most famous work, the Gutenberg Bible. So I think I'm hoping to elicit some kind of dialogue between these two very special print cultures in the world.
After visiting the full 33-foot volume, you can walk to the main hall and view our copy of the Gutenberg Bible to experience the printed word across a millennium.